So, are the Seattle Seahawks going to finally take a regular season serious? Is it going to happen this year? Maybe. We'll see. Brendan Albert is here. I'm Adrian Fedke. Seattle Seahawks preview. Now, let me tell you guys from the jump. I've got Seattle rated as the second best team in the NFL, but I got them going 10-6. What's wrong with me, Brendan?
Well, I mean, you gotta. Here's the thing: if people are like, "Well, if they're rated that high, then how are they beating teams?" Well, the schedule. Okay, the schedule is not exactly an easy thing either. I mean, I like the Seahawks raise the 12th flag. I think that's one of the coolest things in the NFL. Definitely one of the best, if not the best, home field experience. But let's take a peek at the schedule we got here, Adrian. Okay, so I think in the division they'll probably go 4-2, find a way to blow 2 games, and maybe not sweep everyone like they should. They certainly should. But I think they'll probably split with Arizona, and then I'll say you'll find a way the Seahawks will blow 1 game between the Rams and the Niners. Somehow the Seahawks do that in the regular season. But here's some of the tough games out of conference, or out of divisional, excuse me. At the Packers, at the Titans, at the Giants, at the Jags, at the Cowboys to end the year. Then some other games they get the Colts, Texans, Redskins, Falcons, Eagles. All of those teams, and I talked about this just with the Cardinals show we just did, Adrian. All of these teams realistically are playoff teams minus the Jaguars, so that's not an easy stretch. I have them this year going 11-5. I think they're going to find a way to beat one of those teams, but that's not an easy stretch. Now, that said, I think the Seahawks have a lot of great things, but as we talked about it off air, starts and ends with the offensive line, man.
Yeah, it really does. And, well, you kept saying at. That's the reason why I got 10-6 too. At Green Bay, at New York, at Tennessee, at this, at that.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, that's the thing. People are always like, "Oh man, Seahawks, they're so good at home." Well, they have a tough away schedule. Now, the nice thing is I think that the Falcons and the Eagles, both teams who realistically can win their respective divisions, but they have both of those on a Monday and a Sunday night game respectively. So that really helps them. That's a big charge up opportunity for them. But I mean, the rest of these teams is tough, especially when you go all the way to New York. That's a tough one. They start the year in Green Bay. I don't think it's unrealistic they beat the Packers. I think that's a very winnable game there, but that's a tough way to start. The Giants are going to be tough. It's going to be tough to end the season in Dallas too, because by then Zeke's going to be done with his suspension, assuming, of course, no injuries, which is what we're obviously always doing. That's a tough one there, and the Titans are no joke either.
All right, let's get into the O-line now, because this is the big dilemma on the team. So a question to ask right from the jump. What do the Colts, Panthers, and Seahawks have in common, Brendan?
They all have elite-level quarterbacks, and all 3 teams do not draft highly offensive linemen.
Unbelievable. Seattle does such a great job drafting at all the other positions, but they don't want linemen.
It's one of those things. They have one of the best offensive line coaches in Cable there in Seattle, and they ask him to make magic out of these offensive linemen, and sometimes he's able to do it, but there's only so much you can ask of a guy if you're not drafting highly offensive linemen.
Yeah. Last year, the Seahawks had the lowest paid set of blockers in the entire league. Lowest paid O-line in the entire league. They knew that this was a problem heading into last year. They didn't really address it. And even this year, what did they really do? George Fant and Jermaine Ifedi are your tackles. They signed Luke Jokel, great, but he's been a bust since he's come into the league. Maybe he can be a good guard for them. We'll see. Justin Britt is probably their best player on the O-line. Mark Lewinsky is their guard. So those are your 5 starters.
Yeah, I mean, in the 2016 draft, they did draft a tackle for the first-round pick. They did draft a center with their second-round pick this year. In 2015, they took back-to-back guards in the mid-rounds. So they are drafting. They're just swinging and missing. Now, they're hitting home runs on a lot of the other positions they have, but they're just not hitting where they need to in the offensive line. And Russell Wilson's getting banged around. We don't want to get to the point where we're looking at Andrew Luck this season, who is still yet to throw a football, but we're getting to that point now where we got to protect your quarterback. If you want to be an elite team in the NFL, you need to protect your offensive line, and that's a large reason why we see teams like the Seahawks go 10-6 during the regular seasons, because they can't protect their quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, granted, Russell Wilson is a magician. The way he can scramble out of the pocket, this offensive line is just so bad, but sometimes he does kind of make them look almost average because of how he can just elude pressure in the backfield. It's unbelievable. So, that helps when you got a mobile quarterback, but God damn, this George Fant is their left tackle. Who the hell is George Fant?
Yeah, you really are asking a lot of Russell Wilson to continuously get out of sacks, get out of pressures. And you know what? He can do it because he's good enough to do it, but you can't ask him to do it every single possession that he's got the rock in his hands. You got to do a better job protecting him.
He threw career low 21 touchdown passes last year. So O-line not helping him out at all. All right.
No, certainly.
Yeah, and let's get into Russ now. Where would you kind of put him? Do you think he's top 5 quarterback in the league?
No, not top 5. I think that's a big stretch. I think he's probably in the top 10.
Yep.
I would take guys obviously like Luck, Carr, Winston, probably even maybe I don't know if I'd take Mariota over him. I'd take that back, but I'd take Winston over Russ. But I do like Russell Wilson. I think he's a top 10 quarterback. I think he's also the worst soundbite in the NFL. If anyone ever walks him, he is the dream PR public speaker. Like, he is the best. But at the same time, as a fan, you're just like, it's somehow amazing that you somehow said 50 words, but nothing there was helpful for me as an audience, and definitely nothing helpful as a journalist there. So I like Russell Wilson. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. But we got to protect him, as I talked about earlier.
Yeah, I got him at number 6. So he's about not top 5, but I got him top 10 too. So there you go. All right.
Yep.
Do we want to talk about Russell further, or we want to go position by position?
Let's go position by position, Adrian. I think we're ready for that, bud.
Eddie Lacy. They signed Eddie Lacy. He's as fat as Marshawn. Well, I actually could be fatter than Marshawn. They're on the same Skittles diet.
I think I'm one of the few people out there that actually really likes Eddie Lacy. I'm a big Eddie Lacy fan.
I think you're the only one.
I'm fine with that. I am a big Eddie Lacy fan. So they went from beast mode to Hulk mode, which is what Eddie Lacy's favorite superhero is. So Eddie Lacy is a guy I'm a big fan of. He's a power runner. I think him in Green Bay was never really a good fit. He was always a dot-the-I power system. He was never really a put me in the gun and make my first step move lateral for outside zone and things like that. So I think Eddie Lacy's in a much better fit offensively for what he wants. Problem is, it's not a good offensive line there again. So I like Eddie Lacy. I like the contract they gave him there. So I think that's a nice thing. And it adds a little friction between him and Rawls. I mean, look, iron sharpens iron, keep chopping that wood, insert all those coach rhetorics here. But when you have two offensive running backs who are going to have to compete for starting spots, why wouldn't you want that with your team? So it's going to be good to kind of see those two guys battle out the starting running back spot.
Yeah, I think Thomas Rawls is pretty good. I like him as a back. And then you got C.J. Prosise in the mix as well. Pretty good catching the ball out of the backfield for the Seahawks. Kind of made an impact for them later on in the season. So he was good for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an elite level 3-headed monster there in Seattle, but it's certainly better than most teams. So I'm okay with what they have in the running back situation. Look, they went from having the second best, if not the best, running back in the NFL in Marshawn Lynch to having an average offensive running back room. And realistically, that's fine. That's what most teams in the NFL have. They just went from being really spoiled to having beast mode to having a whole bunch of guys who are interchangeable now, and that's okay.
You want to hear a crazy stat?
Hit me with it.
So they had a lot of injuries at the running back position last year. They had 18 players carry the football last year, the most since 1987.
I know at one point they even had like backup quarterbacks in there taking handoffs. They had a big rotational thing. So I mean, for Eddie Lacy, like if you don't like Eddie Lacy as a player, that's fine. But look what you were last year. Now, if you realistic, just like you just said, Adrian, how can you not like the Eddie Lacy signing? It's all incentive-based. It's a short-term deal. It's not a lot of money in it. How can you not like the Eddie Lacy signing then?
Oh, I definitely don't hate the signing. I just don't like the player that much. But for the price, It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Exactly. All right, receivers. I think Doug Baldwin is very, very underrated.
Extremely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doug Baldwin.
94 catches last year. Tied. Was it tied a franchise record? No. Yeah, tied franchise record.
Yeah. I mean, you look at what Doug Baldwin was. He was an undrafted free agent coming out of Stanford, earned his way to the Seahawks, and gradually grew and grew. And now he's, a very good starting receiver in the NFL. He's probably a top 13 receiver in the NFL right now, which I think a lot of people, if you ask them to make 13 receivers, I'm willing to bet a lot of people would leave Doug Baldwin off that list. I like Doug Baldwin a lot, especially in a PPR format for your fantasy league. He's a really good number one receiver for you. Now, opposite of him, that's where we have a little bit of indecisiveness. So,
yeah,
Hurst is the guy who probably is going to have the most targets this season, but athletically, he doesn't really offer you anything different than Baldwin. Very, very similar. So then you look at guys like they have in Lockett and then they have in Richardson, who both are the more speedy guys, and we got to see one of those guys develop. But a pretty good receiver room. I mean, when you have a top 13 receiver and you also have a top 3 or 4 tight end in the NFL, you're okay with the number 2 receiver being a little bit of a camp battle situation.
I love how you say top 13, not like top 15, not like top 10. He's top 13.
Top 13, I would give him.
You know where I got him? I got him at number 12. So you're right there.
No, this is and guys, this is no BS. Me and Adrian don't compare these rankings. That was literally just kind of the top of my head.
That's great. That's great. So you're off top of your head, you could just spit out where he is on my list. You're pretty good with that. But I'm with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just like Doug Baldwin, a PPR guy. He's probably never going to be someone who's going to light up a 70-yard touchdown, but he's going to move the chains for you. He doesn't have alligator arms. He likes working over the middle, and for a small stature guy, he's not exactly easy to bring down. Pretty good rack ability, not like a Jarvis Landry kind of guy, but he has good rack ability there too.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett, I think, is the kid to watch, but I liked him a lot more than I do now, so I'll say that. But dude, I loved his potential coming out of Kansas State. He had a really, really good rookie year. Obviously, he can return the ball, but last year I wanted to see a huge leap from him, and I didn't really get it. So we'll see. But because I'm not really that high on Paul Richardson, Jermaine Kearse is fine, but Tyler Lockett could be a key for them if he can maximize that potential of his.
Yeah, I agree. If you're able to get Richardson or Lockett to all of a sudden really take that next step and really become a really explosive threat, I don't think either of those guys are ever going to be a Deshaun Jackson-esque guy, but I don't think it's a stretch to have either of those guys be like a Travis Benjamin or even do what John Brown was in 2015, those guys who are able to really blow the top off the defense. If you're able to get that, we're going to see a big, big jump for Russell Wilson. Now, all of that said, when you're starting to add in 5-step drops, offensive line's got to be able to drop. I'll be able to do a pass block for it.
Yep. So they figured out how to use Jimmy Graham last year, finally, because they didn't know how to use him his first year at Seattle. So he had a pretty big year, and he's back to being a top 5 tight end, at least in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's definitely in that mix. I mean, Jimmy Graham took a big jump from, I think, about 48 receptions up to 65 receptions, added 300 yards receiving in those 2 years, and added a handful more touchdowns. So Jimmy Graham saw a big, big jump. Now, the big reason for that, too, is tight ends is one of those situations where you're very unique in how you're used in offenses. In Seattle, he was very much used as more of that move tight end out in the slot, getting a lot of mismatches. Seattle, they kind of kept him in, not necessarily a ton, but certainly far more than he was in New Orleans. He's kind of found that hybrid role last year, and now I don't have any reason to think Jimmy Graham shouldn't be a top 3 tight end in your fantasy leagues this year. Yeah.
All right, we focused on the O-line pretty extensively already, so I don't think we need to get into that any further. Except for, I don't know, maybe Luke Jokel, we could kind of talk about him just a little bit. So they had him, they originally signed him to play tackle, but it looks like they're going to plug him in at guard. Luke Jokel, thoughts on him?
Well, Luke Jokel was one of those guys who, if we go back to that 2013 draft, he was a tackle between him, Lane Johnson, and Fisher. Now, Fisher ends up slowly growing in Kansas City. I don't think anyone would disagree. I know Eagles fans definitely would, that Lane Johnson is the best of that group.
Yeah.
And then Jokel was the first overall pick there. So Jokel has struggled pretty heavily. Now, here's the good and the bad news. It can't get worse in Seattle. I mean, that's really what you got to look at with the offensive line. Russell Wilson's had 4 consecutive years of being sacked 40 times. So it can't get worse in Seattle. But, I mean, you're just pretty much adding in bodies and saying, hey, Coach Cable, can you make something work here to get us by? Because, we need to find a way to protect our $1 million quarterback.
Dude, I thought Joko was going to be a stud. I really did. I really did. And then, to see Andy Reid take Fisher at number 1, I was like, you idiot. And then Joko falls to 2. And then the Eagles obviously get Lane Johnson at 4. And he turns out to be the best of the triplets. So there you go. All right, moving on to the defensive side of the ball. I have the Seahawks best defense in the NFL still. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Seahawks, everywhere I look, they're good. So if we start front to back, we talk about the defensive line. Getting Malik McDowell is one of those guys I'm kind of circling, saying, okay, let's see what he does in 2 to 3 years. I think, for him, his problems going into the draft was never anything on the field, it was everything off the field. And that's something that Seattle has been very comfortable with doing, and the other teams have been comfortable doing it was the Bengals. Bengals are nowhere near as productive getting those guys and getting the most out of the players in Seattle. So Seattle's one of those teams, when they draft guys like this, I feel pretty confident that they're going to be able to get, the most out of their players. So other things I like they got Reed last year as a later round pick. That's another interior guy that they have there in the D tackle. Then you go out to the edges. Averill is very, very good still. They have Bennett, who's still very, very good. And they have Clark too. So there's 3 really good defensive ends with 2 good defensive tackles. Very, very good front 4 in that 4-3 defense.
Yeah, I've got Michael Bennett at number 3 for my 4-3 defensive end ranking. So right up there, I got Cliff Averill at number 17. I've got Frank Clark at number 19. So the depth there, you got depth there along the D-line. And the funny thing is, we talked about that draft, right? About Fisher, Luke Jokel, Lane Johnson. The 3rd pick of that draft is on this team too, Deion Jordan.
Yeah. I mean, here is what the Seahawks want to do. Their D linemen, they want to be able to get pressure with 4. And they're able to do it. They don't want to have to blitz a lot. They want to let the guys like KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner play in space and play coverage. And they want to get pressure with their 4. So when I look at what Seattle does, I don't think there's a better team who is better equipped to make chess moves with their D linemen. They can take Bennett and Averill on 1st and 2nd down, being those outside guys, kick them inside. Now here comes Clark, and hey, let's give Deion Jordan a shot here. Because, I mean, he had the talent there to be there. So he comes in, he plays next to Bennett. He's going to get one-on-one situations with a tackle and 3rd and long. And you know what, realistically, they're a good coverage unit, so it's not real unrealistic to say Deion Jordan could get maybe 3 or 4 coverage sacks this year alone if he's getting those reps. So Seattle defensive line, love it.
Yeah, they definitely know how to draft on that D-line. I mean, Reed was a 2nd-round pick. Frank Clark was a 2nd-round pick. So they just keep stockpiling that defense. So
Frank was one of those guys who had red flags coming in when they drafted him. He was a red flag guy. They drafted him. Haven't heard a peep out of him since he's been in the league. No off-the-field troubles, at least that we're all knowing about. And he's been productive. So for me, again, that goes back. I have no reason to not be confident in Pete Carroll drafting Malik McDowell and thinking it could be the same effectiveness.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the linebackers. So Bobby Wright. I almost said Bobby Wright. KJ Wright, probably one of the most underrated linebackers in the league, which is crazy because he's on a great team, but you wouldn't think of KJ Wright being one of the better ones. But Bobby Wagner, I want to get to him. Do you think he's the best coverage linebacker in the league?
No, I'm going to say Luke Kuechly is.
Okay.
I think Kuechly is the best coverage linebacker, but Bobby Wagner's right there. I mean, he's probably the 2nd best middle linebacker in NFL behind Luke.
That is correct.
Is that what you have too? All right. I like KJ Wright a lot too. I mean, right there, you have 2 you have 2 backers who are both capable of making 100+ tackles every season. Now that said, you're also able to do that when you have a really damn good front 4.
Yes. KJ Wright, I got at number 4 for 4-3 outside linebackers. So he's up there. Here, I'll read it off real quick. So number 1, I got Levante David. Number 2, I got Sean Lee. Number 3, I got Vontaze Burfict. KJ Wright, number 4. And Telvin Smith, number 5.
I probably would have had a little bit of a change there, Adrian. I'd probably have KJ Wright as 2, and I'd have Smith as 3. Lee probably is 5, and Burflick's probably my 4. But they're all really, really talented guys. I'm a big KJ Wright fan. I mean,
Yes.
they were unbelievable. I mean, think about it. They were able to get Malcolm Smith to be the MVP of the Super Bowl because they just pretty much said, hey, you're not running the ball in the middle. You're not running the ball towards KJ Wright. So we're going to make you try to work on Malcolm Smith. And Malcolm Smith said, bring the noise. I'm ready for that game. And that's why he won the MVP of that Super Bowl. So they have a very, very good linebacker group, especially with middle linebacker and right outside linebacker. And they're able to be productive everywhere else in the defense.
I just want to make fun of Marcus Smith real quick. Seattle brought him in to play linebacker. Any chance he makes the team?
Probably not.
Yes.
I think, honestly, I think Marcus Smith's future in the NFL is a 3-4 pass rush guy. Yeah. I don't think a 4-3 is really his fit. But, I mean, look, if you have the option to sign in Seattle, you're like, yeah, I'll go do it. It's the same thing with the Patriots. The Patriots say, hey, we're interested in signing. You're like, okay. You know?
Yeah. Patriots will do that. And then they turn him into a Pro Bowler.
Absolutely what happened.
Like, come on. I hate that team so much. All right, secondary. Richard Sherman. Overrated?
Yes. Not because of his skill, but because of the media attention they throw at him. And I say this because we talked about the Broncos show. Cliff Harris doesn't get nearly the media attention he deserves, and I like Cliff Harris.
You did it again.
Damn it, my bad.
Why do you always say Cliff Harris? I know you have a kid on your team that's Cliff Harris, but you always say
I have no idea. But I like Chris Harris more than Richard Sherman, and Chris Harris does not get the media attention that Richard Sherman does. So I'm going to say Richard Sherman is overrated, but he's still a very, very good defensive back. Now, what Seattle loves with their corners, they like those big, long guys because they run so much cover 3 there. So they love those guys to be able to play vertical. So Sherman's very, very good there. And then they went out and they drafted our boy that we talked about months ago, Adrian, from UCF. And I'll give you a moment to chat about him because I know you love him.
Well, I love Shaquille Griffin. I really do. They always draft cornerbacks, and they always turn out to be good. Like Marcus Burley, Deshaun Shedd, all these guys. Ever since Byron Maxwell left, they just keep plugging these guys in. But Shaquille Griffin, dude, he's going to be really good. It's funny because people in the Eagles community are like, yeah, you can get him like 4th, 5th, 6th round. But the thing that happens when guys like Griffin, like when they rise up the charts, during that process, you're not going to get them in the 5th round. You're going to have to overspend. You're going to have to get them in the 3rd round. That's what Seattle did. And kudos to them for getting them.
Yeah, I mean, I like Shaq Griffin. I think his future is very bright in the NFL, so I'm a big fan of that. I like the fact that he's a youthful guy. They got him late, so they're, again, investing money at the right positions to let him grow. He could be someone certainly to grow in and be the opposite corner of Sherman. We know what Sherman is. I don't think it's unrealistic to see Sherman restructure or maybe even potentially get released next offseason just because he's got something like $50 million tied up in him. And the Seahawks, they eventually are going to need to invest money in the offensive line. So if we somehow see a good offensive lineman come loose, I could see a restructuring there for Sherman being one of those guys having to take a pay cut. Now, when we move to the safeties, there's no better safeties in the NFL than what Seattle has. So, I mean, unbelievable the 2 guys they have. Earl Thomas, to me, is the best safety in the NFL, especially what they want to do. I mean, they have a perfect defense for what they want. They want to be a 4-3 cover 3 team. They have 4 nasty D linemen. They have 2 elite level linebackers, and then they have three defensive backs who are really good in the cover 3. And then you have Cam Chancellor being that roamer or joker or whatever you want to call it, who says, "Where's your tight end? I'm going to man him up, and I'm going to bang with him all game to make his life a living hell." And he's able to do it. I just love everything that they have back there with the Seattle Seahawks DBs. I don't know how you can't.
Yeah. So we've talked about my quarterback rankings before on some of these other preview shows because I wanted to ask you specifically, like, where do you put Richard Sherman? I put him at number 4, and the show we did yesterday, you're like, yeah, I would even have him even lower. So I've had Sherman as my top corner for, I don't know, years now, but this is the first year where I actually put him at number 4. He's regressed.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I had Sherman a little lower, I think I had him around like 6 or 7. I think I had him is what Seattle does is they are the best in the world at what they do in that cover three system and four down lineman look, and they don't really change it up too much. They pretty much say, look, here's our playbook. We're going to beat you with it. We don't care if you know it. We're just way better at what we do than anything you can do. So Sherman doesn't really have a lot of or show a lot of opportunities to play man free or press or a lot of stuff. He does it certainly more than people realize. I think that's unfair that people think, oh, all he does is run cover three. No, he does do more than that stuff, but he doesn't show enough of diversity for me to say, hey, he's the best corner in the NFL anymore. I'm a big Sherman fan. I just think that he doesn't have the diversity of showing his ability to do it all. I think he can, but I have to base on what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that was actually going to be the next question was, is he scheme versatile? Because cover three, that's basically, a lot of what he plays. Can he play man-to-man? Can he do some of the other things? So,
yeah.
Yeah, that's what the detractors say. That's what they say.
And he certainly can. I think the people who say he can't do it are just morons. I think he absolutely can. Yeah. I think he absolutely can go both sides of the field.
Yeah.
But, again, what Seattle wants to do is Seattle just wants to be the best in the world at what they do and do that. And you know what? They're the best defensive backs in the NFL. So who am I to say, oh, well, you're not the number one corner, so the team's not successful? No, BS. They're one of the best defensive groups we've ever seen in the NFL.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to underrated, overrated, hot seat. Who's on the hot seat in Seattle?
So I have two guys I have on my hot seat. So the first one I have here is Jermaine Kearse. I mean, he had a new contract and hasn't really been able to distance himself away from being the clear number 2 receiver. So he's one guy I have in here. The other guy I have, and I think this is the guy who's most likely to be released or moved on from next season if he doesn't show drastic improvement, is Lane. He was there. He was invested in heavily in the last offseason with his contract situation. So I think it's very realistic that we see him get released. He had a really bad year as a defensive back this past season. Obviously, going out and getting Shaq Griffin doesn't exactly bode well for his future there at the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Who's on the hot seat? I mean, I guess you could say the whole O-line. I like your Jermaine Kearse one. I like that one. It's tough for this team because they're so good. I got nothing, man. I'll go with the tackles. I'll go with Jermaine Ifedi. You spent a first-round pick on this guy. He's got to show up. There you go. Yeah. Underrated. Who's underrated on the Seahawks?
Man, we rattled off a lot of guys. I think I'm going to say KJ Wright, and here's the reason why. Adrian, you did a great job there of rattling off where he's ranked. I think he's underrated because he doesn't get the media attention because everyone knows about Bobby Wagner, everyone knows about Cam Chancellor, everyone knows about Earl Thomas, everyone knows Richard Sherman. KJ Wright's like, I'm pretty damn good too. So I think he's in there. The other one I would say would be Cliff Averill, another one of their defensive linemen because of his versatility. Everyone knows Barnett is really the guy who makes it all go in the defensive line. Bennett, yeah. But Cliff Avrill's not exactly a slouch either. I mean, he's able to be scheme versatile, moving inside, playing a 3-tech, and also coming out and being a D-end. He's able to do it all, too. I'm a big fan of what he can do.
I'll throw a name out there. We haven't mentioned his name yet. I quite frankly, he should be a starter. I don't know why he's on Seattle, why he picked Seattle. Brad McDougald, safety. I don't know. Why is he on Seattle? Why isn't he starting somewhere? I don't get that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a catch-22. You could say, hey, what's more important to you, winning or being a starter in the NFL? So I mean, that's one way to look at it there. And I mean, realistically, who better to learn from than that safety tandem?
All right, overrated. I guess that's Richard Sherman.
I mean, I think so. And again, I think it's because what the media says. The media makes him out to be this number 1 corner who, is the best in the NFL. And certainly he's very talented. But I think, him being mentioned in the top 5 is a little bit of a stretch for me.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm not gonna say Sherman, but I'm trying to think of who's overrated. I don't really think anyone is overrated per se, except for him, Richard Sherman.
Yeah. Okay. I think you and me are saying the same thing. It's not that he's overrated; it's that the media makes him to be this best corner ever kind of mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I have him top 5. You know, like I'm at number 4. So, fantasy guy.
All right, so my fantasy guy is going to be a late round guy. I think everyone agrees that no one's confident that Eddie Lacy or Rawls is going to be the number 1 running back. They're going to get significantly more carries. I think they're going to get an even split. I think Eddie Lacy might get a little more, but not a massive amount. But my fantasy guy is CJ Procise, and the reason I have him in here is because when you look at what Rawls and Lacy do, it's very similar, but neither of them are really those elite level guys, get the ball to him in space and, get a lot of receptions. CJ Procise has some really nice games towards the end of the year. I think with Carolina game specifically, he really lit up the Panthers. So he's probably going to be that third down running back for them as a late in the PPR league. He might be a late stash guy for a running back situation to be your fifth running back on your roster.
Yeah, Eagles fans know about CJ Procise. He had a big touchdown against them, so we know all about him. But yeah, I like that one. I like Procise coming out of the backfield. I'm with you there. So, all right, that's it. So you got – what do you have? Actually, you never said your record.
I got them at 11-5. I think this is going to be a very good team this year. The only and here's what makes it interesting. I think Green Bay becomes the 1 seed mostly because they have the most winnable division in the NFC. Then when we look at the NFC East and the NFC South, look, those teams, all 4 of those teams in both of those 2 divisions, realistically, I could argue should win the division. And then you look in the NFC West, San Francisco's got no business being in the playoffs. Rams, no business being in the playoffs. Cardinals are okay. But I think the Seahawks right there, they're pretty much gifted with 6 winnable games right there. I think they go 5-1 in their own division. And then I think it's realistic they can get 5 wins out of those non-divisional games. I like 11-5, probably finish second place in the NFC.
You'd think that they'd be gifted wins, but they can't beat the Rams. They just can't beat the Rams. The Rams have their number. It's unbelievable. So.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, that's Adrian, you said it, kind of in a joking manner to start the show, but you weren't wrong. They find ways to lose winnable games every year, So I on paper they're 11-5, but if you know the history of the Seahawks, it's not unrealistic to say they split with the Rams or they split with the Niners this year, even though they really shouldn't.
Yeah. So I got 10-6, but I have NFC Championship game because this team is so talented. Like they're just going to flip a switch in the playoffs. It really hasn't happened the last couple years, but I mean. Green Bay and Seattle are the 2 best teams in the conference, I think, and I agree. Think there's a drop off from there. I don't think there's anybody that's in their class. Even though I have Arizona going 12-4, which is just like ridiculous to you.
Still don't see that.
But yeah, Seattle, I got 10-6, and Green Bay does this too. Green Bay and Seattle are the 2 teams that just lollygag through the season. And they just don't care about home field, I guess.
Well, we'll find out pretty soon. They start the season Seattle at Green Bay.
There it is. All right. So a double dose of the previews today. Arizona and Seattle. NFC West basically covered because who really cares about the Rams and Niners? But we will do previews on those teams as well. So we'll see if we can get to 25 views on those 2. All right. Brennan Albert, I'm Adrian. Thank you. That was Seattle. Hopefully you guys enjoyed.
Take care, guys. Appreciate it.